In the history of Buddhism, there are many great stories of saints who have changed the world. However, few people know that behind every enlightened being, there were ordinary, resilient, and compassionate individuals who silently stood by, sharing the sacrifices and waiting patiently. Today, we will explore the story of Yasodhara, the wife of Prince Siddhartha, who later became the Buddha. Her story is not only a journey of love and sacrifice, but also a profound spiritual journey about patience, compassion, and wisdom in life. Yasodhara was not just the wife of the Buddha. She was a strong and resilient woman, the first to understand the path her husband had chosen, and she patiently waited for his enlightenment. You might think that in the stories of the Buddha, Yasodhara is a figure on the sidelines, a faint image in his career. But in reality, she was the first to help us understand that the path to enlightenment is not just for men, but for all of us. She lived fully in every moment, patiently waiting, accompanying and sacrificing, only to realize that enlightenment is not a goal to be achieved, but a state of being present in every moment of the present. So, who was Yasodhara, and what made her an important figure in the story of the Buddha? Even though she did not directly follow the path of enlightenment, as he did, the story of Yasodhara is not just the story of a wife of Prince Siddhartha, but also a journey of sacrifice, patience, and wisdom, the virtues that helped her maintain her faith and support her husband on the path to enlightenment. Let us embark on a journey to explore the life of Yasodhara, the wife, the mother, and also an important disciple of the Buddha. To better understand the challenges she faced, the love sacrifice, and the profound lessons she left for us. Princess Yasodhara, often known as Rahula Mata Bimba or Bhattacachana, was the daughter of King Supabuddha, ruler of the Kolia tribe, and Queen Pamita, the sister of King Suddhodana. Princess Yasodhara was of the same age as Prince Siddhartha. When she was 16, Prince Siddhartha was chosen by King Supabuddha to be her husband after a display of martial arts skills. At the age of 16, the princess became the wife of Prince Siddhartha. A woman of beauty, intelligence, and virtue, Yasodhara was deeply loved by both the prince and her parents-in-law. Their married life was peaceful and happy, albeit a bit slow in terms of having children. 13 years after their marriage, Princess Yasodhara gave birth to their first child. It seemed that from then on, her life would be complete and fulfilling. However, her beloved husband, who she had loved for so long, had already decided to renounce the world and seek a path to liberation from the suffering of life. The child was born at a time when he had already made up his mind to leave. In the work, Old Road, White Clouds, Thich Nhat Hanh described the moving scene of Prince Siddhartha's renunciation as follows. As the music of the celebration began to rise, the moon also began to rise over the trees in the southeast. Queen Gautami, the foster mother of the prince, spoke with Yasodhara until late into the night, only returning to the palace to rest. When she was escorted out to the courtyard, Yasodhara saw the moon high in the sky. The celebration continued with drums, music, and laughter. After seeing the queen out, Yasodhara returned to find Channa, the prince's attendant, still sleeping. She woke him up and whispered, "Perhaps tonight, the prince will need you. Prepare Kantaka with a saddle and bridle, and also get another horse ready for yourself." "Where is the prince going at this hour?" Channa asked. "Don't ask, just prepare, as I've instructed. The prince may need you tonight." Channa obeyed and went to the stables. Yasodhara then went back inside the palace. She arranged shoes, a hat, and a cloak for the prince, and fetched an extra blanket for Rahula. Afterward, she changed clothes and lay in bed. She listened to the music, singing, and laughter. Finally, the celebration ended, and perhaps everyone had gone to rest. Yasodhara lay still listening to the silence return to the palace. She waited, but after a long time, she still did not hear Siddhartha return. Meanwhile, Siddhartha sat alone for a long time in the palace garden. He looked up at the sky. The moon shone brightly, and thousands of stars twinkled. He made the decision to leave the palace that night. He entered, put on his shoes and cloak, and lifted the curtain to peek into the bedroom, where Rahula lay next to Yasodhara. He wanted to say goodbye to her, but hesitated. He had already told her the most necessary words. Waking her up would only make the parting more difficult and sorrowful. He let the curtain fall and was about to step out, but then he stopped and lifted the curtain one more time to look at his wife and child. He looked carefully, as if to take in one last look of the familiar and beloved sight. Finally, he dropped the curtain and stepped out. As he passed the reception room, Siddhartha saw the dancers sleeping in disarray on the cushions. Their hair was a mess. Some had their mouths wide open, like dead fish. Their soft arms were stiff as logs, and their legs were sprawled like those on a battlefield. They looked like lifeless corpses. Siddhartha felt as if he was walking through a graveyard. He opened the door and headed to the stables. Channa was awake. Siddhartha said, "Channa, bring Kanthaka here." Channa nodded. Everything was prepared. Kanthaka was saddled. Channa asked, "Are you leaving my prince?" Siddhartha nodded. Channa entered the stable and led out another horse also saddled. Together, they led the horses out of the palace. Siddhartha stopped and petted Kanthaka. He said to the horse, "Kanthaka, this is an important journey. Take me as far as you can." He mounted the horse, and Channa mounted his own. They rode slowly to avoid making too much noise. The gate guards were fast asleep, and the two men passed the gates easily. After riding about a mile outside the city, Siddhartha stopped. He looked back at the capital, lying quietly beneath the moonlight. It was here in this city that Siddhartha had been born and raised, and where he had experienced so many joys and struggles. It was here in this city that his father, Queen Gautami, Yasodhara, Rahula, and all his loved ones were sleeping. He silently said, "If I do not find the path, I will never return to Kapilavathu." He turned his horse south, and Kanthaka began to gallop. The two rode like this until dawn, crossing the border of the Sakya kingdom. Before them lay the Yanoma River. They guided the horses along the riverbank, looking for a shallow place to cross. After crossing, they continued for a while, and then stopped. Before them stretched a forest, where a deer's shadow passed by. Birds flew around without fear. Siddhartha dismounted and smiled as he petted Kanthaka's mane. He said, "Kanthaka, you've done well. You've helped me get here, and I thank you." The horse raised its head and looked at him. Siddhartha took the sword from his saddle. With his left hand, he held a tuft of his hair, and with his right hand, holding the sword, he cut his hair. Channa dismounted. Siddhartha handed him the tuft of hair and the sword. He then took off the necklace he was wearing. "Channa, take this necklace, the sword, and the hair back to my father. Tell him to have faith in me. I leave my home, not because I am selfish, but for all people and all beings. Please comfort my father, comfort the queen, comfort Yasodhara, I ask you to do this for me." Channa took the necklace, and tears ran down his face. "My prince, everyone will be in so much pain. I don't know how to tell the king, the queen, and Lady Yasodhara. How can you live in the forest and sleep under a tree like those ascetics? You've always been accustomed to the soft cushions of the palace." Siddhartha smiled. "Don't worry. I will live just as others live. Channa, go back to tell them so they don't worry. Let me stay here alone." Channa wiped his tears. "Please, my prince, let me stay with you so I can serve you. Please don't make me take this sorrowful news back to those I love." Siddhartha patted his servant on the shoulder, his voice serious. "Channa, you know I need you to go back and report to my family. If you truly love me, you will follow my words. I don't need you here. An ascetic doesn't need a servant. I need you to go back to the ones who love me. Go back now." Channa reluctantly obeyed. He carefully placed the hair and necklace inside his robes and hung the sword on Kanthaka's saddle. He took Siddhartha's arm with both hands. "I will obey my prince. But please, my prince, don't forget to return after you find the path." Siddhartha nodded and smiled at Channa with encouragement. He patted Kanthaka's head. "Kanthaka, you may go now." Channa took the reins of Kanthaka and mounted his own horse. Kanthaka raised its head and looked at Siddhartha one last time before turning around. Its eyes were as wet as Channa's. Returning to Yasodhara after hearing the news that the prince had left, she was deeply saddened beyond words. She had lost the most precious thing in her life. The Golden Palace now felt like a dark prison to her. The newborn child Rahula, named by the king, became her only source of comfort. Since learning of her husband's life, as an ascetic, Princess Yasodhara also renounced the lavish lifestyle of the royal family. She removed all her jewelry and exchanged her silk garments for the yellow robes of a nun. When she heard that her husband only ate once a day, she did the same. When she found out that he did not sleep on a high bed, she too lay on the floor. When she knew that he gave up garlands and perfumes, the princess followed suit. Many nobles and princes wanted to approach her, but she refused, choosing to remain in her husband's house, caring for her child while waiting for news of Prince Siddhartha. It wasn't until her son turned 7 that the princess finally reunited with the one she had been waiting for. Sometime after attaining enlightenment and spreading his teachings, the Buddha decided to return to the capital city of Kapilavatthu, his homeland, with the monastic community. Upon hearing the news, Princess Yasodhara ordered all her maidservants to wear yellow robes. When King Suddhodana invited the Buddha and the monks to the palace for a meal, everyone came out to pay respects, but the princess did not, despite her deep longing. She thought, "If I can maintain my virtue, the Blessed One will come here to visit me. At that time, I will pay my respects to him." After lunch, the Buddha handed his bowl back to his father, and with 2 of his chief disciples, entered the princess's room. He sat on the seat prepared for him and instructed everyone, "Let the princess pay her respects to the Tathagata as she wishes. Do not say anything." When the Buddha sat on the seat, prepared for him wearing the moon-colored yellow sar, without jewels or extravagant flowers, and since Yasodhara, who had come from the inner palace, crawled on her knees to the Buddha's feet, bowed her face to the dust at his feet, and cried uncontrollably, as if she had never cried before. The Buddha let her be, for he was the king of the mind. After a while, when the tears had washed away the long-suppressed emotions, The Buddha gently spoke, Yasodhara Gopa. The Tathagata has not changed much. I am still the same person as before. But now my mind is purer and my wisdom is brighter. I have discovered the eternal value of life that we the princes once pondered and struggled with together. Now, I am the embodiment of what is both inside this life and also outside and above it. That is the ultimate answer to the spiritual puzzle that once seemed unsolvable. Therefore, I no longer live for myself, but for the happiness and peace of all beings in the 3 realms and 4 species Gopa. You are wise, a heroic woman, a companion in suffering and joy. With me, a fellow traveler on the path of the perfections. You must know this. Upon hearing these words, Yasodhara felt her heart open, and she wiped her eyes, which she thought had run dry from tears long ago. Queen Gautami gazed at her fondly and praised her virtues endlessly. Since the prince left, the princess has been deeply sorrowful, as if losing the most precious treasure in the world. Yet she has maintained rare self-control. Her greatest comfort has been Rahula, whose laughter and playful actions, running around cheerfully, have kept her spirits light. Upon hearing that the prince had become an ascetic, wandering with no home, the princess also gave up her jewels, wearing only a simple white sara. When she learned that the prince was living an ascetic life, the princess also began to forego perfumes, oils, high beds, and warm blankets, choosing to sleep on the ground with a wooden pillow, eating only a small meal at noon. Many noble princes, wealthy and handsome, came to propose marriage to her, but she rejected them all, refusing to entertain them. When she heard that the prince had attained Buddhahood and was leading the monastic community back to his homeland, the princess wore the same moon-colored yellow sar to greet him. See, not only does the princess possess complete virtue, but she also shares in the prince's journey with compassion and understanding. Throughout the years, months and days of separation and longing, Your Majesty, please stop, I said, feeling ashamed, and went to the side of the queen. The prince is now a Buddha, and there is nothing the Buddha does not know. Indeed, Gopa, the Buddha replied, there is nothing the Tathagata does not know, and the Tathagata knows much more than that. He then turned to speak with King Suddhodana and Queen Gautami. Gopa is like this not only now, but for countless eons, since the time of the Buddha Dipankara. Through the 24 Buddhas, she has always been pure, modest, virtuous, and faithful, sharing in joys and sorrows, constantly helping, supporting, and encouraging the Tathagata on the path of advancing the holy work. Having said this, the Buddha revealed the past, approximately 4 Asankhya eons and 100,000 great eons ago. The Buddha Dipankara appeared. At that time, there was a young man named Sumedha, born into a wealthy Brahmin family with wisdom, appearance, and education beyond compare. After his parents passed away, Sumedha made a grand and generous donation, renouncing all his wealth, jewels, and treasures, and then went to the mountains to live the life of an ascetic in poverty. Although he ate fruits from the forest and drank spring water through diligent practice, he attained the 8 meditative absorptions and the 5 spiritual powers after many years of hardship. However, he knew that the problem of suffering and affliction had not yet been fully resolved. Some time ago, in the city of Ramavati, the people were bustling with excitement, preparing to welcome the Buddha and the assembly of monks. They had to work together to repair a long road that had been washed away by floods, with the ground full of sticky mud. When the young ascetic Sumedha first heard the name of the Buddha Buddha, his mind was deeply moved. Oh, that word seemed to invoke the profound urge to reach upwards to the highest goal of enlightenment. It was like some driving force that swept away the darkness of ignorance and allowed him to encounter the true essence of the original nature. Thus, he decided to contribute to this sacred task by taking on the most difficult stretch of the road. He thought, if I use my supernatural powers, the road will be completed in an instant, but if I do that, I will not break a sweat, and no effort will be spent. In the end, it will not have any meaningful value. So the young ascetic decided to use his own labor. He worked hard, sweating, and toiled like everyone else with his hands and feet covered in mud, like the others. When the Buddha and the monastic community arrived, the road was smooth, clean, dry, and well prepared. But the part that Sumedha had worked on still had a tiny stretch left incomplete. Seeing the small section of the road still muddy, Sumedha had already decided how he would handle it. However, as the Buddha, Dipankara, and the monastic community approached, he looked around, wanting to offer something to the Buddha. Amid the crowd, Sumedha noticed a beautiful Brahmin girl holding 8 lotus flowers in her hand. Strangely, she was also looking at him. Was it as if 2 stars in the sky were attracting each other? The girl's name was Sumita, and as she saw Sumedha, her heart was stirred. It seemed as though she understood his aspiration, and she spoke her voice like the song of a nightingale. Among these 8 lotus flowers, 3 are for me to offer to the Buddha, and 5 are for you with one condition. Please tell me, the young ascetic Sumedha eagerly responded. Any condition you ask I will fulfill, as long as I can offer it, quickly. Sumita smiled. Her cheeks flushed like the light of the setting sun. Your appearance and character are extraordinary. Even your attire, made of tree bark and leaves, radiates nobility and purity, challenging all virtues in the world, mocking the darkness and the evils of this world. The merit you have earned from working on this road to welcome the Buddha is also something beyond human strength. The people say this is a rare feat, and they acknowledge this remarkable act with such supreme qualities and such a perfect connection. I am certain that in the future, you will achieve your great aspirations on your journey. I wish to accompany you to be like your shadow, serving you with utmost devotion in countless lifetimes to come. Sumedha's heart suddenly stirred. It began to act on its own without asking for anyone's approval. After a brief moment of silence, he replied, I agree and I accept your condition, but you must promise me not to hinder my aspirations or the practice of the perfections. The young woman, shyly lowering her face, nodded in agreement and handed him the 5 fresh lotus flowers. Then, without any agreement, the 2 of them held hands and ran together to kneel at the Buddha's feet, offering the 8 lotus flowers to him. As soon as the offering was made, the young ascetic, Sumedha, suddenly collapsed to the ground, clutching the Buddha's feet and crying out, There is still a small stretch of muddy road. I vow to use this impure, imperfect, and unworthy body to lay the path for the Blessed One and the Holy Assembly to walk upon. I vow that the merit of this act will lead me to the attainment of Buddhahood for the happiness and peace of all beings, both celestial and human. Having made this vow, the young ascetic Sumedha immediately lay down in the mud. The Buddha, turning his mind towards the scene, saw and understood all causes, conditions, and results. At that very moment, the Buddha, the fully enlightened one, heard the earth trembling with the supreme vow of the young ascetic. The deities and Brahmas in the heavens scattered mandara flowers, praising and honoring this extraordinary merit. The Buddha turned to the assembly and spoke. Two remarkable events have occurred here. The first is the 8 lotus flowers from the handsome young man and the beautiful girl. With their sincere vows, they will be united as husband and wife, from this life to the next, always warm and faithful, encouraging and reminding each other on their spiritual journey. The second remarkable event is that the young ascetic, with his supreme vow, will practice the perfections through 4 asankhya, eons and 100,000 great eons across 24 Buddhas, and will ultimately attain the state of a fully enlightened Buddha, just as he desires. The Buddha then turned to the two of them. Sumedha, your vow will be fulfilled. And from the next lifetime onwards, Sumita will be your loyal spouse, like 2 birds flying together over the long river and vast seas. Your hearts, aspirations, happiness, duties, and results will all be in harmony. And Sumita, you will have happiness beyond measure and will never hinder your husband's noble intentions. The Buddha concluded, riches, royalty status, fame, power, and wealth are not the necessary conditions for human happiness. Even love, though important, is not complete without understanding empathy and mutual respect. Sumedha and Sumita have been united as husband and wife for countless lifetimes, and in these lifetimes, Sumita has always stood by her husband's side, walking the supreme path together. Sumita, in her past life, is now Yasodhara, and Sumedha is the Buddha, the Tathagata. When the Buddha finished his story, everyone was deeply moved. Yasodhara, in particular, was overwhelmed with emotion, tears welling up in her eyes. But these were tears of refreshment and happiness. Queen Gautami gently placed her arm around the princess and said, "Indeed, Yasodhara has always been like this. Ever since the night the prince left the palace, it was the princess who, with her sharp intuition, knew everything and silently supported the prince in his decision to leave and follow his own path." "Yes," the Buddha nodded. "The Tathagata knows Yasodhara was never in a deep sleep where she was unaware. Though her sleep was peaceful, she was always alert. When she saw Channa preparing the cloak and provisions, I understood more clearly her subtle support, because Channa's mind was not yet refined enough to be so perceptive." During the days that the Buddha stayed in Kapilavatthu, the princess also listened to the Buddha's teachings and absorbed the Dharma. Though deeply attached to her son, she selflessly allowed him to follow the Buddha and seek true happiness while she remained in the palace, fulfilling her duties as a daughter-in-law to her parents-in-law. Later, when King Suddhodana passed away, Queen Gautami ordained as a bhikkhuni, and Princess Yasodhara also entered the monastic life, eventually attaining arahantship. She passed away at the age of 78. The story of Yasodhara, the strong and compassionate wife of the Buddha, is a journey not only of love and sacrifice, but also of deep spiritual transformation, from a royal girl to the wife of Siddhartha, and later the mother of Rahula. Yasodhara faced countless challenges and hardships. However, these trials did not break her. Instead, they taught her invaluable lessons in patience, compassion, and enlightenment. Her life has taught us precious lessons, such as patience and everlasting love. Yasodhara lived fully in love and patience as she waited for her husband to attain enlightenment. Although Siddhartha had left the palace in search of the path to liberation, Yasodhara remained steadfast in her faith, waiting and accompanying him through the difficult new life. This is a lesson in patience, in love, even in difficult times, or in the face of loss. Patience is not just about waiting, but also about the ability to accept challenges and hardships without judgment or resentment. In a relationship, especially love, this can be understood as accepting the other person with all their differences and their individual goals in life. Learn to love and be patient when the other person needs time to grow or pursue their personal dreams and aspirations. Sometimes love is not just about being together, but supporting and enabling the other person to grow. Patience is also the key to achieving lasting success in both work and life. The second lesson, Yasodhara teaches us compassion and acceptance. Yasodhara was not only Siddhartha's resilient wife, but also a model of how to face challenges and loss with unconditional love. Her compassion was not just shown through love for others, but also through accepting and respecting all the changes in life. When Siddhartha decided to leave the palace to search for enlightenment, Yasodhara faced a loss that words could not describe. However, she did not harbor anger or resentment. She accepted her husband's choice and understood that it was the path he needed to follow. Yasodhara knew that in life we cannot always hold on to the things we love, but what matters is how we face and accept everything as it comes. Yasodhara's compassion was not just empathy, but a deep understanding of the difficulties and suffering that others go through. When Siddhartha left, she not only felt the absence of love and companionship, but also understood that his path to enlightenment was not just for him, but for all beings. She did not cling to the past or her own desires, but opened her heart to accept life as it came, whether in joy or sorrow. In a life full of change and challenges, we are often swept up in negative emotions when faced with hardship, injustice, or unexpected changes. However, the compassion and acceptance Yasodhara demonstrated teach us how to face these challenges with calm and equanimity. Compassion is not only empathy, but a profound understanding and a willingness to help others in difficult times. The acceptance Yasodhara practiced was not resignation or indifference, but the understanding that sometimes there are things we cannot change. However, we can still find peace and freedom in how we respond to them. When we learn to accept life as it is, we are no longer caught up in things beyond our control, but instead we find serenity and tranquility in the present moment. Think about the conflicts in work or relationships. When we face differences, rather than trying to change the other person or fighting the circumstances, we can choose to live, gently understanding and accepting that everyone has their own path. What matters is not letting disagreements disturb our inner peace. Furthermore, compassion and acceptance help us cultivate an optimistic mindset. When we are grateful for what we have, rather than constantly seeking what is missing, we realize that life is already full and abundant. When we feel that sufficiency in the present challenges become opportunities for learning and growth, rather than burdens that discourage us. Try setting aside time each day to practice compassion for yourself and those around you. Sometimes a small gesture, like listening to someone or offering a warm smile, is enough to comfort and encourage them. And when you learn to accept yourself and the events in life, you will find deep peace without needing to chase after anything. Thank you for joining me in exploring the touching story of Yasodhara and the valuable lessons she has left for us. If you find value in her journey and want to apply these lessons to your own life, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to continue accompanying us on the path of seeking enlightenment and happiness. Please share your thoughts in the comments below this video. What has Yasodhara taught you about compassion, acceptance, and patience in life? Your sharing is an encouragement for others, helping us create a community full of peace and love.